Good morning and welcome to Today in Putnam County, hosted by Putnam County Mayor Randy Porter, the show that takes a look at the events and what's happening all around Putnam County, as well as interviews with local, community, and business leaders. And now, sharing his insights and experience, here's Today in Putnam County with County Mayor Randy Porter.
I'm County Mayor Randy Porter, and this is Today in Putnam County. Thanks for joining us this week. Hope you're having a great weekend. Our show this week, it's about the Methadone Clinic that is trying to locate in Putnam County. Today we're going to discuss the drug itself, the positives and the negatives, along with what you can do if you oppose the clinic like I do, being located here. My guests today are experts that we're going to be talking to today. Our local pediatrician, Dr. Apryl Hall, emergency room physician, Dr. Sullivan Smith, and our county attorney, Mr. Jeff Jones. Thanks, guys, for being on the show this week.
Happy.
Thank you.
Methadone Clinic trying to come to Putnam County. Jeff, we found out back in May, Cedar Recovery, an opioid addiction treatment center in Tennessee, was asking for a certificate of need from the state of Tennessee to be able to put a methadone clinic down on Burgess Falls Road. And just a little history that we're talking about when it comes to Cedar Recovery and what they've tried before. They'd previously tried to come to Cookeville, right?
Yeah, they had, and there was somewhat of a battle about that as well. The city of Cookeville changed its zoning regulations after the change of the zoning regulations. Apparently Cedar Recovery decided not to appeal changes that were made and kind of retooled and decided that they were going to put a clinic in the county at 1805 South Willow Avenue, which for people that have been in our area for a while is the old Bennett Sheep Building.
Bennett Sheep Building. But before they left the city of Cookeville, they went to Overton County and tried that, right?
Tried to.
That didn't go well, did it?
No. They had a public meeting in Rickman that went very, very poorly. And they decided for safety reasons, is what they've told us, that safety reasons that they abandoned any plans to place a clinic in Overton County.
It's kind of odd, don't you think, that we've heard them say before, Cedar Recovery, that they were never going to go to a community that didn't want them. We had a big community meeting back a couple of months ago. Hundreds of people turned out. We got thousands of people that have signed a petition that do not want it here, but yet they're still continuing with it.
Well, that's correct. The board that actually oversees a certificate of need, which is required in this particular situation for this clinic to be here in Putnam, is the Health Facilities Board again. I've been monitoring them to see what kind of letters in support and letters in opposition that they've received. Right now, the count is about somewhere in the neighborhood of 4,000 letters in opposition to this clinic. There are 5 letters in support of the clinic.
That's pretty clean cut, isn't it? Yeah. And Cedar Recovery is able to go to the state is where that this is going to happen at, because they're looking for a certificate of need, right? Because in Putnam County, we don't have zoning out in the rural part of the county, which we couldn't limit them from coming. So they're going to this state board, state health care facilities board, to get this certificate of need, correct?
Well, they would have to go to the Health Facilities Commission regardless to get a certificate of need. In Tennessee, the certificate of need program is the way that the state monitors and licenses hospitals, clinics such as this, to keep control of the growth, access, keep costs in check, and so forth. It's a fairly involved process, a fairly involved application. And one of the components is having a hearing in front of the Health Facilities Board, which is going to take place this month on August the 28th in Nashville.
And so if this board at the state, if they grant a certificate of need, is there anything that we can do?
Well, there are some appeal rights. Within 15 days, you can appeal a decision. Anybody who's objected can appeal a decision of the Health Facilities Commission. And the board has changed. Let me say that, too. Used to, the Health Facilities Commission board only dealt with certificates of need. Now they have combined the licensing board and the certificate of need board. So we're kind of dealing with a little bit of an unknown situation, because this is the first hearing that this combined board has had.
Yeah. For our listeners, the building that they're trying to locate in down on Burgess Falls Road, there's also a youth supports training facility that's inside that same building. It's also within a couple thousand feet of a daycare center, churches, a new Parkview School, our business park, large residential area. Jeff, why would they choose, do you think, in your opinion, why would they choose someplace like that instead of somewhere close to the interstate that didn't affect anybody else?
I really can't speak to their intent or their motives for choosing that particular location. I do know that it's fairly close to a facility that they've got on South Willow that already exists. But I really can't tell you why, other than maybe a money issue. I'm not uncertain.
One thing about this facility is it's not owned by anybody local. The tax records go back to somebody that lives in Singapore. I don't know if that's got anything to do with it or not. You know, rumors around town is that no one else was willing to, to sell or to them. So we don't know if that's true or not. It's just rumors.
Yeah.
Just rumors. So we had a bill at the state legislature that would have probably prevented us from even being here.
It would have.
So we had a bill at the state legislature that would said that out in the rural parts of counties that don't have zoning, that if a facility like this, a methadone clinic, wanted to be there, they'd have to get county commission approval first, right?
Yeah. The bill that was proposed the last term of the legislature was that you could not locate a clinic like that in an unincorporated area of a county that didn't have zoning. That perfectly describes Putnam County. It passed the Senate.
Unanimously.
Yeah. It never even get brought up in the House.
No, never even voted on it. Don't know exactly
Still
why.
don't know the reason.
We don't either, but hopefully for other counties it'll get brought up and passed this next legislative season, but that doesn't start till next January, so there's no way to.
That's correct.
No way for us to do anything right now. We had a community meeting down in that area on Burgess Falls Road down at the golf course. Hundreds of people showed up. We got thousands of signatures. We got lots of people writing letters and so forth. So far, it's been a real turnout for the community to be against that, to be against the facility. Is that the way you see it?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. One of the things that was mentioned in one of the meetings, and I don't recall if it was in Overton County or in one of the City of Cookeville meetings, because they had several in the City of Cookeville discussing this issue, was that the representatives of Cedar Recovery said they would not locate somewhere where they were not wanted. And I think you may have alluded to that earlier. It's just obvious that this methadone clinic is not wanted in Putnam County.
Yeah, and it's the location is terrible too. As we said before, I mean, you're trying to go in the same building that a youth sports training facility is in, and you got this daycare next to it. You got the new public school. You got the business park. You got this private school, office building. You got all this residential around it. So. I mean, that's one of the reasons that we don't want it is the location.
Absolutely. There's some real safety concerns about this, given the fact it's in the same building as a youth sports facility. It's difficult for me to get my head wrapped around why that would be something that would be desirable. I just don't know.
I don't either. We oppose it. You got me as the county mayor, Jeff's the county attorney, our sheriff, our district attorney, some of the judges. There's lots of folks that are opposing this, and we have to go to Nashville on August the 28th before the state board. Lots of folks are planning on attending too. They're only going to give us about 10 minutes to speak, and then 2 minutes per person after that to be able to speak to it. But we feel like we need to go, and everyone I've talked to, I have not talked to the first person yet that has called me or contacted me that's for this. Everyone's been against it.
I did not know any of the people that had submitted letters in support of this. I really didn't know who they were, and I'm the same way. I haven't spoken with anybody that says this is a good idea.
We're talking about the proposed methadone clinic that Cedar Recovery is trying to locate down on Burgess Falls Road here in Putnam County. Coming up on the next segment, we're going to talk to Dr. Apryl Hall and Dr. Sullivan Smith and get into methadone and what it's about and the negatives and the positives and all those kind of things. So stay with us. We got to take a break.
And now back to Today in Putnam County, hosted by Putnam County Mayor Randy Porter.
Welcome back to Today in Putnam County. I'm your host, County Mayor Randy Porter. Our show this week, it's about the proposed methadone clinic that they're trying to locate in Putnam County down on Burgess Falls Road. I have three folks that we're discussing that. County Attorney Jeff Jones, we just went through the legal aspects of how this can happen and what we're doing to fight it to keep it from happening. Now we're going to talk about the medical side of it, about methadone, the actual drug itself and the negatives that involve that drug. I've got Dr. Sullivan Smith, emergency room physician, and Dr. Apryl Hall, local pediatrician that have real life experiences with this drug. And Sully, I'm going to start with you.
Sure.
For our radio audience, let's talk about methadone and what actually is methadone.
So methadone's a narcotic. You know, it's a pain medicine. It's in that same family with the other things you think about, like oxycodone and morphine and hydrocodone, those sort of things. But it's trouble. It's a dangerous drug. It's not used much because it is dangerous, you know. If you take methadone, the onset of its action, the things it does to your body, is pretty slow. It's about 45 minutes Okay. But then it lasts much longer. The half-life is over 2 days.
Wow.
So you take this and it hangs around forever and ever. Well, that's pretty spooky because slow onset, if this, and we've seen methadone abused here. It was a real problem for us back when we had all those doggone pain clinics.
Yeah.
And then we regulated them and methadone dropped, So people would take some and you wait around a little bit, like that aspirin for a headache or some Tylenol, about 20, 30 minutes, it helps. Well, this is much longer than that. And so you think you're tough, or maybe it didn't work, or, and so you take maybe another 2, and then you go sit somewhere and start drooling and quit breathing and go unresponsive, and you die because you quit breathing.
Right. But it's used to treat opioid addiction, right? So you're actually swapping one drug for another one?
Because of that long action, I guess you don't have to dose as often. And it may have a little less effect on your brain than others, but, I think it's a dangerous drug. It interacts with a lot of other drugs. It interacts with your heart. It changes the rhythm, the electrical system of your heart, and predisposes you or makes you more likely to have life-threatening cardiac rhythm problems. And it's well known. It's personally, I think we ought to control it more. I think it should be a Schedule 1, which is in the same category as LSD. You may know the drug heroin, or heard of it. That was actually legal back
one
around
time.
the early 1900s.
Yeah.
Doctor could write a prescription for it. Well, now it's a Schedule 1, meaning there's no real good use. It's dangerous. Those dangers outweigh the benefits, and so you can't prescribe it. I think methadone ought to go into that same category.
Apryl, you're to the hospital. You see all these folks in the ER and ICU and everywhere. What's been your experiences with it?
So I have a lot of experience in a lot of different ways with methadone. Unfortunately, my first real experiences were in East Tennessee when I was training to be a resident. And as a resident, we saw the first real wave of babies with neonatal abstinence syndrome. And so when I came to Cookeville in 2008, I was surprised to see that trickle down. And we really noticed about my third year here practicing, so that was about 2011, that our numbers were skyrocketing. And we had a lot of babies who were born addicted to methadone.
Wow.
And these babies, and we saw lots of other drugs, don't get me wrong,
yeah.
but the babies on methadone were horrible. They were so difficult to get off of methadone. And we use morphine pretty commonly for NAS to wean them off because it's a short-acting opiate with a short half-life. And so it works really well with most of the other medications to get those babies off. If you were on methadone, very often the babies would quit breathing before you could get a hold of their symptoms.
Wow.
They were the most miserable, pitiful creatures on the planet. They cried themselves hoarse, literally. They would have such severe diarrhea that their bottoms would be bloody. They would rub their arms and knees and toes and fingers, just rubbing and moving, that they would rub the skin off. Their chins would be bloody. They would want to suck, but they couldn't eat because they were just so disorganized. They would vomit. They would shake. They were miserable, in short. And I also found, for whatever reason, at that time, these mothers were on such high doses of methadone too. Crazy high doses. And nobody was weaning these medications at that time. Nobody. They actually would oftentimes double their dose just because they were pregnant, because of the stress of pregnancy. They were concerned that they might lose the baby. There's been lots of studies since then that say it is perfectly acceptable to wean. It's perfectly acceptable to actually change from methadone to other drugs. And since we had the regulation of the pain clinics and methadone has fallen out of favor, the number of babies who are born with addiction to methadone are almost zero now. At one point, we were seeing 3 to 4 out of 10 babies that if they had NAS, it was methadone. And if they were on higher doses, those numbers were higher. And there were almost no babies whose moms were on methadone that did not have severe NAS that required medication. And when I say almost none, maybe one out of all the ones that I've seen in 16 years.
Yeah. So if, from hearing from both of y'all, if this is such a bad drug, why are we prescribing it? I mean, there's other drugs out there, right? You got Suboxone and some others that treat these. I know that they're trying to say because of fentanyl having to use it, but if it's such an unstable and bad drug, why so do you think we're prescribing it? And these clinics are popping up everywhere.
Well, because there's money.
Money game?
Yeah, I think it is. The numbers of people that, there are some people that maybe that's the right drug for, but they're few and far between, in my opinion. And I sure don't think that, when you look at that certificate of need application, they're talking about somewhere around 40 people for the entire Upper Cumberland. I don't think it's reasonable to subject the rest of the county to this clinic and all of the problems with this clinic. We forgot to mention it's going to be pretty close to a gun store, too. These are all things that if we were going to open a liquor store in that spot, we couldn't do it.
Yeah.
And now we're going to put people on methadone, a very potent, very dangerous narcotic. People are going to take their dose, and then they have to sit for a while before they're released. Well, that's about the time that this stuff starts hitting your brain. That's when we put them behind the wheel, and they're going to be driving home or to work or whatever they do.
And you do need to remember that this is daily dosing, usually for about 3 months. So every day, those same people are going to be at that door getting that medication, waiting 15 minutes, and then getting behind the wheel.
And by virtue of the certificate of need, they have to be open 7 days a week. So
Wow.
there are also a number of churches in that area as well.
Yeah.
And so they're setting their hours, they said, to be different, to be offset with the children's athletic center because of school. Kids are in school, and they're going to be there in the afternoon. But don't they go to those places in the summer?
Well, yeah, and so when we had one of our community meetings, there was a lady that actually was drug addict, was on methadone, and she had an accident. She got dosed and had an accident and actually killed another person, and I think had to spend some time in prison. I think there was a lawsuit that just got settled up in the Knoxville area a 3 months ago where that there was same thing happened, and the doctor got sued. I think they prescribed it. But so when we look at it, there's no guarantee. All of us, there's 4 of us sitting here in the studio, we could each take a dose of this methadone and we all react differently, right?
Absolutely.
So it's that unstable because it may not affect me much at all. You may be kind of high. Apryl, you may be really, really high. And Jeff, you may be overdosed. That's how unstable it is, right?
And I said it's about money, and I really think it is, because when you look at that CON, that Certificate of Need application, they talk about charges and what they're charging people. And for that 10, 15-minute visit, we're talking about $250 or more being charged. And literally show up and swallow some liquid and sit.
And KenCare pays for it, Medicare,
they
those
do.
kinds?
They don't charge them as much. But, key to the application from the state board as they consider it is indigent care. And when you look at their application in the first year, they're going to see 1 indigent patient. That's somebody who can't pay. And you look at year 2, 1 more. And I don't know if it's another person or it's the same one who stays on the methadone. But then when you look at the money, they're making it's about $750,000 the first year, and it's about $1.4 million the second year. And they see 1 indigent patient. I think that tells you what it's about.
Absolutely. We're talking about the new proposed methadone clinic that's trying to be put in down on Burgess Falls Road. Going to be a hearing on it in Nashville August the 28th. I've got some experts with me today. We're talking about methadone, and we're going to continue that in the third segment. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
And now, back to Today in Putnam County, hosted by Putnam County Mayor Randy Porter.
Welcome back to Today in Putnam County. I'm your host, County Mayor Randy Porter. Thanks for joining us this week. Hope you're having a great weekend. The show this week is about a proposed methadone clinic that they're trying to put in Putnam County down on Burgess Falls Road. And I have 2 physicians and our county attorney with us today that we're talking about it, Dr. Sullivan Smith, Dr. Apryl Hall, and our county attorney, Jeff Jones. So, Apryl, we've been talking about all the negatives of this drug, and we haven't touched on all of them. We're basically, methadone is an opioid, just like you're treating people that are addicted to opioids with another opioid. And even folks that take it, there's a lot of side effects to this drug, right?
So anytime you're on any opiate, you have to worry about becoming addicted. And this is something that you become addicted to. And what happens is once you become addicted, you have to have more and more of this drug in order to have the same effect. So eventually your receptors in your brain start getting pruned back because they're just so inundated by this medication, which causes abnormalities in the chemicals in your brain like epinephrine and serotonin, which can cause you to have anxiety. It can cause you to have have depression. It also causes you to have pain sensitivity. So if during this time you fall and you break your ankle or your wrist, it's going to be very difficult for us to get your pain under control because these receptors are all bound up. And you also have to remember you can still overdose on this medication. There's nothing magical that keeps you from overdosing on methadone. We haven't even talked about the things like the respiratory depression, which is what usually causes you to overdose and possibly even die when you stop breathing. And the long-term effects, it can damage your liver. It can damage your heart and your brain. You end up with memory issues long-term with use of any opiate, but specifically they've studied and seen that methadone can cause some issues long-term with your ability to think. So if you know for sure somebody's coming to a clinic every day at the same time to get a medication for at least 3 months, they're going to sit there until the peak time that the medication is going to start working. We put them in a car. We know that they've got some memory issues because they've been on it long term. It's concerning.
Yeah.
It's very concerning.
So we talked about a lot of these negatives. Are there any positives to methadone?
There are a few. If you have liver disease, this is probably a better choice for you than Suboxone or some of the other medications. If you have severe pain, chronic pain, and you have opiate use disorder, this is probably a better medication. However, those are few and far between.
Yeah.
Those are not the majority of the people that would be falling into this category receiving this medication. And when we have better alternatives, we should use those alternatives.
And those are some alternatives, is Suboxone and its Subutex and some others. So why not use those instead of the methadone?
I think it's expense, and I think it's dosing convenience, because methadone's a once-a-day sort of medication. You know, we've been talking about these patients who are going to a methadone clinic where they get their daily dose. If you read through their certificate of need, kind of towards the back, down at the bottom of the page, after they reach a point, and it's a few months of a stable dose, they start prescribing this for folks to take home.
Yeah.
And that's worrisome, because we know factually that a lot of overdoses, particularly in our young kids, our teenagers and such, are people getting medicines out of their medicine cabinet of the family member. And so now, we have that potential. And in fact, we used to see it when, I'm the county medical examiner.
Yeah.
And when we had pain clinics, we had deaths from methadone. And when we controlled the pain clinics, those deaths went away. I'm not aware of one since we controlled the pain clinics.
And 75% of these people never come off of it once
Wow.
they're on it. 75%.
I've heard that it's more difficult to get off the methadone than it is the opioids. Is that true?
There's a lot of people who talk about how severe the withdrawal is, and I've seen it in babies, and I've seen it in adults too, and it's pretty miserable. So why would you?
Yeah.
Weaning is very difficult, so why would you?
So we're talking about the new possible new methadone clinic that City Recovery is trying to put in Putnam County, and talking with Dr. Sullivan Smith, Dr. Apryl Hall, and our county attorney Jeff Jones about the situation, the negatives of methadone, and how that the community does not want this here. I saw some stats, and I think it was on the state website, where that after about 1 month, half of the people that were going to the methadone clinic to get the methadone don't go anymore. They drop out. And then within like 3 to 6 months, 75% of them aren't there anymore. So are those folks relapsing? I mean, what's happening there, so?
Yeah, so it could be a couple things. Relapse. I mean, narcotic addiction's tough. It's really tough. And when you withdraw from narcotics, although it's not life-threatening as other medications can be, you're as miserable as you could ever be. I mean, there's nothing worse. And so perhaps, there's some withdrawal that plays into it and people go back to old habits. But remember, there's a cost to this, and you got to be able to pay for it. And they said their visits, if you're indigent, they'll still bill you. They'll charge you, and it's about $28 a day. Well, most of the time when people are addicted to narcotics and they go into treatment, they've hit rock bottom. A lot of them can't pay $28 a day. How many of you listeners could pay $28 a day?
Every day, 7 days a week.
For years.
Yeah.
That's a real financial burden. Now, there are, programs through TennCare and Medicare and things like that. But, it may well be a financial issue. I'm not sure. But you're right. People drop out. But they drop out of other treatment programs
They also have to get there. So they have transportation to get there and back. They can't have a job, at least not reasonable hours, if you have kids, if you have other responsibilities, it makes it very difficult, because especially the first 3 months. It might be more reasonable later, but those first 3 months are going to be really hard for people, as opposed to something like Suboxone, where you take a 1 week supply. I mean, you get it, you're gone for a week, and you come back and get your next week's worth.
There's so many other options here, isn't there? I mean, we've got treatment facilities here in Putnam County.
We do.
All kinds of them that they're having some really good success.
A lot of treatment organizations as well.
Yeah. The opioid settlements that have been coming down from the drug manufacturers and stuff, this is the second year we've got those. And last year we put out, 400-something thousand. This year doing the same thing to those treatment organizations, helping them to treat folks, and they've had some really good success.
So critical to any recovery from an addiction is counseling. Somebody who can help walk you through this and understand and deal with things. Despite the fact that these methadone patients will be in that clinic every day, they're only going to get counseling once every 2 weeks.
Right.
Again, I mean, look at motives and why they're putting this clinic here.
Looks like it would be better for them to spend their money and put a long-term treatment facility in here. If you're going to spend $5 or $6 million, do something that's going to help folks long-term. Jeff, we saw some stats from the Journal of Experimental Criminology that they put out, and looking at this, they said there's a significant increase in drug and violent crime when you get these facilities in the area. That's something else we have to look at too, isn't it? Sheriff Farris has been addressing.
Certainly. Methadone actually has a street value to it as well. I mean, there's a criminality component to this that's a concern for our area.
Guys, I appreciate y'all being on the show today and discussing this. The Methadone Clinic that's proposed to go in Putnam County. We're fighting it. We're against it. We are looking to go to the state on August the 28th. A certificate of need request that they have made. County Attorney Jeff Jones, Sheriff Farris, myself, the DA, a lot of us are going to go and going to be at that hearing to try to get them to not issue the certificate of need. Going to be a lot of media you're seeing in the newspapers, Facebook. Check out my Facebook page, Randy Porter, Mayor of Putnam County, Tennessee. You'll see some more stuff there where you can actually click on a link and sign an online petition against it. You can get a summary letter, I guess you'd say, that you could use to send a letter in opposition to it. Jeff, you just look at the stats, and there's almost very few that are for it, and most of them are against it, right?
Absolutely, overwhelmingly against it.
Be in prayer for us, and we're going to do the best we can to try and prevent this certificate of need from going in. Ultimately, it's going to be the state of Tennessee that will make that decision. That's our show for this week. Hope you join us every weekend for Today in Putnam County. I'm County Mayor Randy Porter. I hope you have a great rest of your weekend, and may God continue to bless our great county.
You've been listening to Today in Putnam County, hosted by Putnam County Mayor Randy Porter.